Levin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm going to focus on the 18-month period starting in January of 2000. But I want to spend a few minutes describing the environment leading up to that date. Ms. Hill began her very, very thorough and very thoroughly discouraging presentation with the statement that the story begins in December 1999 with the intelligence community on heightened alert. And I've prepared a chronology which I'll share with all of the members, which, just to summarize, go back a few years before her beginning of the story. In January of '96, when the CIA created a special unit to focus on bin Laden. In February of '98, when bin Laden issued a public fatwa authorizing and promoting attacks on U.S. civilians anywhere in the world. May 1998, in a press conference, when bin Laden says he's going to bring war to America. In June 1998, when the intelligence community obtains information from several sources that bin Laden is considering attacks in the U.S., including Washington and New York. August 1998, when the intelligence community obtains information that an unidentified group from the Middle East are going to fly an explosive-laden plane from a foreign country into the World Trade Center. September 1998, when the intelligence community obtains information that bin Laden's next operation could possibly involve flying an aircraft loaded with explosives into a U.S. airport. October 1998, when the intelligence community obtains information that Al-Qaeda was trying to establish an operative cell within the United States. The fall of 1998, when the intelligence community obtains information concerning a bin Laden plot involving aircraft in New York, Washington areas. And then in December 1998, when as we heard yesterday or the day before, when DCI Tenet provided some written guidance to presumably everybody in the CIA, declaring that the United States is at war with bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. That's December 1998, before the story begins. The spring of 1999, when the intelligence community obtains information about a planned Al-Qaeda attack on the United States government facility in Washington. August 1999, when the intelligence community obtains information that bin Laden has decided to target for assassination the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense and the DCI. December 1999, when Ahmed Rassam is arrested as he attempts to enter the United States and the state of Washington from Canada with chemicals and detonator material. His intended target is Los Angeles Airport. December 1999, when the DCI communication to CIA employees warns of mounting threat of Al-Qaeda attack to U.S. interests abroad and in the United States, urging them to do whatever is necessary to disrupt bin Laden's plans. That's the background. That's what happens when in December of 1999, the CIA gets information from its own sources that two men, the men we're following, Al-Midar and Hazmi, are coming to Malaysia. That is not rumors. That is confirmed by the CIA's own people. And then they come to Malaysia in January of 2000. And the CIA, we know, monitored the Al-Qaeda members there, including the two people at issue. They knew that these two people had, at least in one case, already had a visa to go to the United States. That information was not put into the watch list. It was not shared with the FBI. It knew that Al-Midar had a multiple entry visa, as a matter of fact, and knew of his ties to Al-Qaeda. Two failures there, not placed on the watch list, not shared with the FBI. Then, in March of 2000, the CIA found out that Al-Hazmi had entered the United States at Los Angeles International Airport on January 15th, not shared with the FBI, even though they knew he entered the United States, not shared with the watch list. Then another event occurs in October of 2000. This is a watershed event. This is the coal being blown up And by January of 2001, the CIA knows that the Cole planner was at that January 2000 meeting in Malaysia. They knew that a man named Khalid had been the center of that attack and the planner, and that Khalid was at the January 2000 Malaysia meeting with the two people we're talking about, al-Midhar and al-Hazmi. CIA still did not place either individual on the watch list, still no notice of known visas, and I emphasize that, known visas to the FBI. They may or may not have shared with the FBI earlier that one of them had a passport, but in terms of visas and visas to enter the United States, and the fact that one at least had entered the United States, still, CIA doesn't place names on watch lists, still no notice to the FBI. And now we have a direct link to the killer, or the killers of Americans on the USS Cole. Direct link between these two men, al-Midhar and al-Hazmi, to the planner, Khalid, of the al-Qaeda attack on the USS Cole. Now I want to proceed now to the June 11th, 2001 meeting, because that's what I really want to focus on, and then the events after that. But that's a bit of the background, and if I'm wrong in any of that, I would assume that our witnesses would correct me. On page 9 at the bottom of Ms. Hill's report, it stated the following. On June 11, 2001, FBI headquarters representatives and CIA representatives met with the New York FBI agents handling the Cole investigation. The New York agents were shown but not given copies of the photographs that they and told that they were taken in Malaysia. They weren't told that. Still, information being withheld. This is after the Cole. Information withheld from the FBI. One of the New York agents recalled that al-Midhar's name was being mentioned. He also recalled asking for more information on why the people in the photographs were being followed. So we got an FBI now asking the CIA, why are you following these folks? He recalled asking for more information on why they were being followed and for access to that information. The New York agents were advised they could not be told why al-Midhar and the others were being followed. This is truly unbelievable. I've got to tell you all, this is extraordinary. This has got nothing to do with information which can't cross a wall. This has to do with leads which are not shared with the FBI. Just simple leads. Information which is so critical. Now, an FBI headquarters representative told us in her interview that the FBI was never given specific information until it was provided after September 11, 2001. And here's where I want to pick up with our witnesses. The CIA analyst who attended the New York meeting acknowledged to the Joint Inquiry staff that he had seen the information regarding al-Midhar's U.S. visa and al-Hazmi's travel to the U.S., but he stated that he would not share information outside of the CIA unless he had authority to do so and unless that was the purpose of the meeting. Now, June 11th, New York. Now we've got the FBI asking the CIA, would you tell us why you're following these two guys? And according to the CIA analyst, to our staff, that information was denied because no authority to do so, unless that's the purpose of the meeting. So I'll ask our CIA officer, as far as you know, is our staff report correct?
I would, the whole staff report?
No. What I read to you.
Could I just limit my comment to the June 11th meeting for right now?
Just on that.
Okay.
Is that correct, what I just read?
I would, first of all, I would distinguish between one CIA officer saying, I don't feel comfortable with sharing this information with a particular FBI individual, from the entire corporate body of the CIA and its policy. The second thing I would say is that the CIA officer was
Just
there.
ask you if this happened.
Not exactly that way.
Okay, then tell us how it happened.
I wasn't there. But what I will say is that when the CIA officer said, I'm not going to give you, Mr. or, FBI agent, this information, he was in the company of an FBI headquarters agent or analyst who had the information. The information was in the hands of the FBI. It was a question of my interpretation of this event, at which I wasn't there, is that the analyst was being conservative, and basically all I can do is go into the dangerous ground of speculating what's in his head.
No, I'd rather you not speculate. You weren't there.
I wasn't there.
Let me ask you.
But this is important because he was there with FBI people, and this was not CIA withholding information from the FBI. There was something else at work here that I'm not quite sure of, because we were in support of the Cole investigation. A lot of this exercise was Cole.
I just want to move to the FBI agent who I believe was there.
Yes, sir.
Before you begin, I just want to say something. You will never receive the public recognition that you deserve for what you try to do, for your emails, for your efforts to break down wall, real and imaginary, for your effort to break through bureaucracy. And if I have time, I want to ask you about what happened on 9/11. But in any event, I just want you to know that you deserve that recognition. And I'm sorry it can't be public recognition. Having said that, and not knowing how you're going to answer the question, you were at this meeting?
Yes, sir. First off, I'd like to accept that, but on behalf of all the agents that I
and I knew you would do that. I expected no less from you. You were at the meeting. Was there a refusal?
Yes, sir.
Was that accurate, the staff report?
As best as I can recall, sir, I wouldn't be able to add anything to your comments. From what I remember, it's exactly how it occurred, and there's still some disagreement. However, my belief of how events happened to this day are that the analyst herself did not know all the information that the CIA had at that time, and that I know there are different versions of that, so I don't want to speculate about that. But my understanding of events today is that the analyst did not have access to that information either, because we had intelligence agents from the Bureau that were in the room at the time, and the rest of us criminal agents, even though we were frustrated, could have walked out of the room and then received that information.
Did someone at the meeting say he could not share information outside of the CIA unless he had authority to do so, and unless that was the purpose of the meeting? Do you remember that?
Not those exact words, but I was told that he could not share that information with me and my agents at the time, and that information would be attempted to be passed in the following days, weeks, or months.
Do you know whether it was passed in the succeeding days?
No. In fact, I had several conversations with the analyst after that, because we would talk on other matters, and almost every time I would ask her, what's the story with the Midhar information? When's it going to get passed? Do we have anything yet? When's it going to get passed? And each time I was told that the information had not been passed yet, and the sense I got from her, based on our conversations, was that she was trying as hard as she could to get the information passed, or at least the ability to tell us about the information.
Mr. Rollins, do you know whether or not the FBI agents were told by the CIA officials at that meeting that they could not know why the CIA was following al-Midhar and the others that met in Malaysia? Do you know whether that information was passed at that time, and if not, why not?
No, sir, I was not at the meeting. I have talked extensively to our analyst that was there, and as my colleague noted, she is of the position, and I know your staff has talked to her, that she in fact gave our New York agents everything that she had.
She said that she did give?
In other words, what was passed at that meeting,
Well, according to our staff report, he stated he could not share information outside of the CIA, unless he had authority to do so. Do you know if that's accurate or not?
No, sir, I don't know if that's accurate.
Okay, you're talking, when you said a she, that was an FBI analyst. You don't know what the CIA analyst said at that meeting.
That's correct.
Okay. Now we'll move then, and I have to rely on the staff report as being accurate, that there was a denial of information at that time. Now we move on to August 22nd. An FBI analyst assigned to the Counterterrorist Center there is now working, and also assigned to the CTC, determined that al-Hazmi and al-Midar had entered the U.S. in January 2000, and al-Midar's June 2000 reentry visa allowed him to stay until August 22, 2001. And at that point, they were watch listed. Is that correct? As far as you know?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
That is when it happened. I think we have to know precisely, and perhaps we have to talk to the people other than the FBI agent who is here, who confirms what our staff report says to the best of his knowledge. I think this is such an important question that if there's any difference on this from the staff report, we should hear from the CIA. And I would ask our CIA officer who is here to take that request back, and if there is a difference that officer had recollection-wise as to what happened at that meeting, whether or not she did in fact refuse to let the FBI know in June of 2001 why the CIA was tracking these two men, why they didn't say at that time that we knew that these two men had visas to the United States. The FBI still didn't know that. That still wasn't on the watch list as of June of 2001. Now, this is 16 months after the CIA knew that these men had visas to come to the United States, had entered the United States. Still, according to our staff report, there is this refusal on the part of the CIA to share this information. And this is critically important information. I think that we've got to have accountability in this system. And that failure is massive. And if that information should have been shared, and should have been shared a lot earlier, and if watch lists should have been entered, and if FBI should have been notified, which it seems to me it's clear all that should have happened, then we've got to know who is responsible for those failures. If we're going to really break down walls, real and imaginary, we've got to have accountability. If I have 1 minute left, I'd like to ask our FBI agent to tell us what happened on 9/11 as to what he tried to do, and as to a passenger list, I understand, if this is okay, non-classified.
No, it was we had come back from the buildings all in a state of shock, and there was a brief at that time by the analyst at headquarters over who was actually on the manifest. And when we heard the name Khalid al-Midhar, obviously I was upset, made no bones about being saying the fact that I was upset. And I know the analyst was very upset also, so it wasn't just necessarily on one side, but it was in the afternoon during a conference call that and I remember exclaiming, "This is the same Khalid al-Midhar that we had talked about for 3 months," and I remember a supervisor at the time saying, and rightly so, that they had done everything by the book with regards to at least what the FBI could do based on current understanding of what the laws were. But at the same point in time, realizing how ludicrous that statement sounded to me, it just didn't sit well.
From what I know of the information that was being sought, there was no barrier to that information being shared, that these persons were suspected of being terrorists. That could have been shared with the FBI. The fact that they were suspected of being in the United States, that could have been shared with the FBI. I don't know of any prohibition in law in terms of messing up criminal investigations for that information, not just that information, not to have been shared. The reason that June meeting is so critical, there's many reasons why it's critical, but one of them is, Mr. Chairman, that al-Midhar was out of the United States in June of 2001. He came back in, as I understand it, in July of 2001. If he had been put on the watch list then, at that June meeting, he could not presumably have come back into the United States. I think that there's, you know, it's one thing to say that the dots weren't connected, and they weren't, even when there was an effort made to connect them at a June meeting. The effort to connect the dots was frustrated. It's another thing when the dots aren't even put into the file, when the dots aren't put into the watch list, when the information isn't even shared. That's even preliminary to connecting dots, is simply to get the dots in place where someone can connect them. We didn't even see that. So we have failure piled upon failure here, I believe. I hope there's going to be some accountability and some answers where there so far are none. But again, I want to thank our witnesses, all of them, and I want to thank Ms. Hill and her staff for an extremely thorough report, which I hope will shake up some things. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.